Got to give credit to the young Spurs. At least they fought to the bitter end.
You are Locked On Spurs, your daily San Antonio Spurs podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Spurs, right here on the Locked On NBA Network. I'm your host, Jeff Garcia, Spurs writer for Kings 5 San Antonio. Glad to have you back. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Spurs your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts. And it was such a great game last night at the AT&T Center. The Spurs, those young guys don't have any quit. And if last night's game didn't prove it, I don't know what will. The Spurs took the Memphis Grizzlies, yes, the mighty Memphis Grizzlies, to overtime, losing 124-122. Devin Vassell tried to be the hero, missed a three-shot to close out the final period, in this case overtime. Spurs came up short. Spurs are now 5-7 overall on a 5-game losing streak, and will next face the Bucks. We're going to recap last night's game. What did we like? What didn't we like? What left out on the stat sheet? And then talk about Collins' injury and how that impacts the Spurs. He is back, everybody. Let's go and welcome him in. Michael Jimenez with San Antonio Sports Star. And Mike, we need to give you a round of applause here, Michael. Now, halftime with Mike Jimenez on the Star. Congratulations, buddy.
Oh, I appreciate it. It was kind of interesting when they made that announcement. I got an email saying, from here on forward, the show is known as Halftime with Mike Jimenez, and I'm very, very proud of it.
I'm proud of you. You've come a long way since winning the contest way back when, and I know you're going to brag about your show and what you got going over at the Star. By the way, I Woj-bombed that for you. Thank you for letting me do that.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Information on that.
Actually, I wonder who my source is. Mike, let's go and dive into it here. I don't want to keep you up too long here. Spurs gutsy performance, 124-122 overtime loss. These kids proving they got fight. Let's start off with the eye test. What did the eye test tell you in last night's battle with Memphis?
Well, the eye test showed me that the Spurs could play up to their competition if they really want to. We saw that earlier this year when they beat, the Sixers, and you see them play well against good teams. The eye test shows that they have the talent to go toe-to-toe with certain teams. And right. I was kind of pleasantly surprised about this game, because I thought that John Morant would just run them over. And you take a look at his stat line, you would think that he'd have an incredible game. But that came in spurts. I thought the Spurs played a very, very fun game. It went down to the very end, and they didn't give up. Even with 1 minute to go in overtime, they didn't give up. They were still fighting. But the eye test for me, though, the one thing that I am most impressed by was Jeremy Sohan's performance.
Absolutely.
He is not the greatest of shooters, but he brought out some tricks, especially early in the game. He had this really nice little spin move, and I was like, whoa, I haven't seen that before.
Yeah.
Jeremy Sohan had a good game.
He definitely did. And what I liked about the kid is that he doesn't back down for competition. He may be a 19-year-old kid, but he's going at some of the bigger names, at least on the defensive end, and trying to shut them down. We saw that last night when he was trying to slow down Morant. We saw that aggressiveness on the offensive end, put back dunks, almost saving the game for the Spurs for a W with his heroics down the stretch. So, yeah, he's definitely coming along little by little. Glad to see him, again, coming in the group. For me, the eye test was is that everybody just really contributes. You look down at the starters, all starters scored in double figures. Now you look at the bench. You got Josh Richardson with 13 points. Okay, that's normal. Okay, fine. Josh is going to do that. But then you got Charles Bassey, a G League call-up, score double figures as well. They spread the wealth. They share the burden offensively. Keldon Johnson joked that he's not the head of the snake, that everybody collectively is the head of the snake. He may be right. On Johnson, he didn't have that great of a shooting performance, but everybody stepped up and chipped in a valiant fight against the Memphis Grizzlies, Michael.
Oh, most definitely. And Charles Bassey, seeing him out there, he put up some monster numbers over in the G League before getting the call-up. He only had a couple of games there, but there were some massive numbers. And it showed that in the G League that he could actually rebound. He was getting He had one game where he had like 15 rebounds in a game, and that is translating over to the NBA. He didn't play a lot of minutes, but when he was out there, it was very effective. You knew he was there. He was not in the background doing nothing. He was out there hustling. I like him. I think that this is a find. I mean, a guy who went to high school here in San Antonio for a couple of years. So it's something where it's a fun story to know. Do I think he's going to one day be a starter? No, but I like his hustle. I like what he brings to the table. And it's funny because I'm trying to put this all together as to why the Spurs are working together. I know the Spurs have lost 5 in a row. I get that, right?
Right.
But to play so well against this team and to play so tight for a lot of games out there until the bitter end, I think part of it is because I don't think anyone is intimidated by anyone on this team. Back in the day when it was Tim, Tony, and Manu, the young guys had to revere those guys because they had won championships and they had, Hall of Fame careers. If Keldon Johnson is the leader of your team and Devin Vassell, those are just young guys who just want to hoop it up, man.
Yeah.
Those are young guys in their early 20s. So it's not like you can be intimidated by them. So a Bassey can come in and start playing. Romeo Langford, who I've enjoyed watching play this year, can start playing well. There's just something there where they're growing together. It's going to be a long season, and there'll be more L's than W's. But you're seeing a fight. You're seeing a fire that's there. And I'm becoming more and more optimistic about the future of this team.
I know there's, a lot of fans or just people out there say, there's no such thing as a moral victory. But in this rebuilding development season, moral victories can go a long way to help in that development, in that learning curve. You brought up a good point. The eye test tells you this Spurs team can play with the big boys, that they can test those teams that are seen to be NBA playoff bound. And if this helps their development, that's great because on the to-do list for this season was player development. So player development wise, the eye test told me last night against the Grizzlies, Trey Jones is coming along. He had a double-double. We mentioned the play of Charles Bassey. They're going to start developing him. I'm pretty sure he's going to get more minutes. Pop talked about that in pregame, saying that he showed him something in the little bit of time that he's been in San Antonio. We mentioned Jeremy Sohan. Devin Vassell is making leaps and bounds. So all in all, if player development is on the to-do list, then the Spurs put another check mark on that box last night against Memphis. Once again, we're here with Michael Jimenez. He's with San Antonio Sports Star. Follow him on Twitter at MikeESPNSA. And this episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can make you feel like it's a high-stake wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you got to have and check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Look, you can add your job, and you can even add a purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you are hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number one in delivering quality hire versus leading competitors. What you want to do is go to linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA right now. It'll help you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. You can post your job for free there. Again, that's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We are back with Michael Jimenez right here on Locked On Spurs, recapping last night's game. Spurs losing to the Grizzlies 124-122 in OT. But before we look at the stat sheet, let's go ahead and just quickly thank you again for making Locked On Spurs your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter to the biggest stories in sports, you want to check out Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. So, Michael, you look at that stat sheet, and what leaps out at you? What do you like when you see the numbers?
Well, what I like is kind of weird because this is going to sound a little bit odd, but what I liked about this was that the Spurs played so well last night, taking it into overtime, despite the fact that Keldon Johnson was only 4 for 15 from the
Right.
field, and only 2 for 8 from three. If I had told you before the game started that Keldon would have a shooting night like that, we would have thought that the Spurs would have lost by double digits.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I'm impressed by that, that the Spurs showed some fight there, and that other players kind of picked up the slack, whether it be Sohan. I mean, Jakob Poeltl was 10 for 12 for crying out loud from the field.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
He was all over the place, 22 points. Jakob Poeltl is somebody that continues to impress, and it's one of two things that you got to think about with Jakob. It's one of those things where if the Spurs start winning and they become buyers later on, well, then you would want a Poeltl there. But if anything else, all else fails, Poeltl's that trade piece that could be flipped for a pick down the road, and he's showing his worth out there.
Yeah, yeah. When I look at the stat sheet, what leaps out to me is the continued play of Trey Jones. Now, I did mention to him on the eye test segment of this episode, but I want to dive into his numbers now because he's quietly having a good season. Everybody was focusing on Keldon and Vassell, and rightfully so. Coming into the season, who's going to be the next player to take the next lead? But Keldon, what else can he do? Vassell, but quietly Jones is showing he's the one taking the lead. Look at his numbers in the loss to Memphis: 37 minutes, 11 points, 11 assists. I love that. 1 steal, just two turnovers. Love that assist to turnover ratio right there. And he's taking, at least he's attempting to take threes. He took 4 of them. He made 1. That's going to be his development arc right there. Can he start knocking down that 3 shot with regularity? But even when he's having a bad shooting night, 4 for 13, contributing in other ways. We mentioned the assists. We mentioned the points. He's leading this team. I like that. That's what's leaping out for me when I look at that stat sheet, Michael.
Oh yeah, when you're getting double digits in assists, I mean that's always a good thing for your point guard. Trey Jones, he's very streaky when it comes to his shooting percentage. This wasn't the greatest of games for him when it comes to shooting, but defensively, a couple of things. He drew an offensive foul. It's one of those things where the Spurs, I think that happened like 2 or 3 times in the game, where they went around screens and they drew an offensive foul. And it created a turnover. And one of the things I look at when it comes to the box score and in watching the game was the fact that the Spurs cut their turnovers in half. I mean, the Spurs played an overtime game today, and they cut their turnovers in half. They had 24 against the Nuggets and 12 last night against the Grizzlies. So the Spurs are going to be in contention in games if they can keep their turnovers down. We know that they're getting good numbers when it comes to assists and leading, or one of the leading teams in the NBA when it comes to assists per game. But it's limiting those turnovers. I mean, it's kind of like limiting interceptions in an NFL game. If they can do that, they'll be in the games more often. And we saw that tonight, because had they given up 18, 20 turnovers, they would have lost this game going away in regulation. But limiting those turnovers is going to make it more difficult for other teams to beat this Spurs squad.
So you look at the the overall numbers, and it was relatively close for the most part. The Spurs shot for the game, what about a little over 40%, 48%. Memphis was at about 51%. So again, close. But the one bad thing that stands out for me is the Spurs got just whacked in the rebounding department. 53 rebounds for Memphis to Spurs 39. Now that could be an effect of Zach Collins not there. We'll talk about more about that in the next segment. But if we had to put a reason why the Spurs lost, those second chance opportunities for Memphis really helped them secure a lead and help them in their win. I mean, obviously we know in overtime it was pretty much the John Morant show. He took over, but yeah, rebounding that sticks out like a sore thumb when I look at the stat sheet, Michael.
Yeah, another thing that sticks out like a sore thumb. You talk about second chance points, but also the gimme points. The Spurs came into this game 27th in the NBA in free throw shooting, and they didn't get a lot of attempts today. I mean, I guess they had enough, 16 out of 23, but that's 69%. That is lower than their season average, which was low to begin with. I mean, if you're shooting 80%, for example, that's an extra 2 or 3 points that you're leaving, on the table there, and that's the difference sometimes when it comes to a close game against a really good team. You got to get those freebies and knock them down.
Yeah. Now look, you salute the team. They definitely gave Memphis all they can handle, and pushing them to overtime. Even when it looked like the game was well over in the fourth period. I mean, Memphis outscored San Antonio 23-18 in the fourth period. The Spurs did just enough on the defensive end to get the job done, at least force overtime and give him a chance to get the W. And speaking of defense, you mentioned Sohan. His defensive efforts in that fourth period really helped the Spurs stay within the fight. He got that steal off an inbound pass from Memphis, dunked the ball, he almost forced a Memphis turnover when he was denying them the pass entry underneath the baseline. I mean, you got to tip your cap to the rookie, Michael.
He is growing on me. Yeah. I have been saying this for the past couple of months. I hope that he proves me wrong, because Sohan was not somebody that I was very high on when it came to the draft. And I thought getting him at number 9 was a little bit early. But it's so weird to cheer for somebody who all of their efforts don't come out on the box score. You take a look at it, you go, okay, well, what did he do? What did your starting power forward do? Well, he had 13 points. Okay. He had 2 steals. Okay. A couple rebounds. Okay. You look at that box score, and if you take it for face value, it's going to seem like it was just an okay game. But what you don't see in the box score is, like you said, him creating turnovers for the other team that he doesn't get the steal, but it's something that he did. It was the diving for the ball. It was the continuation of a play where he didn't get the assist, he didn't get the bucket, but the ball went in the hoop because of his efforts at midcourt diving for a ball. It's a different type of player. I was not used to this type of activity or this type of hustle on this team from that particular position, because the Spurs, when it comes to the 4, what have we had in recent years? We've had the LaMarcus Aldridges of the world where, the ball just kind of sticks and defensively they do it just one way. And it was a veteran old way of playing the 4 position. Now we see Sohan go out there, and Sohan is so young, has so much energy, and is a pest. And he's starting to grow on me.
Yeah, he really is. I'm going to assume that Sohan's play is the one big bright spot you liked out of the Spurs team last night.
That's most definitely, because he lights the fire, and it's so funny because they feed off of each other so much. For so long, it was Keldon Johnson, basically barking things out and trying to get the team going, and then you see Vassell do his thing. But now they bounce off of Sohan, and they feed off of his energy, and they feed off of his efforts. One last thing, we haven't talked much about Devin Vassell. As I was watching him play, I want to get the tape measure and see how tall this guy is now. He seems to be getting taller and taller by the week.
Yeah.
Like, he's so young. He's still growing.
Yeah, that's scary. That's scary for the league and great for the Spurs. For me, the one overall shining thing for me in a loss is, again, that fight. I love this team. Just doesn't quit, doesn't fight. Even when they're down, I believe they were down double figures during the game. They still clawed their way back to take a lead, really test Memphis. So I love that, showing that fight once again. Hey, we're not done talking. When we get back, we're going to shift gears and talk about the big injury news, and that is Zach Collins. Unknown how long he's going to be out, but what does this do for the Spurs moving forward? What are the impact on him as a player and the team? And yeah, once again, we're here with Michael Jimenez. He is with San Antonio Sports Star. Make sure to follow him on Twitter at MikeESPNSA. We're back with Michael Jimenez with San Antonio Sports Star, talking about last night's overtime loss to the Memphis Grizzlies. And now we're going to talk about Zach Collins. So the big news, injury news, Michael, is Zach Collins. Unknown how long he's going to be out of commission, but basically he suffered a fibula head fracture. So basically he broke a bone in his leg. And I looked around medical websites. The average is about 4 to 6 weeks out of commission. I guess my first question to you, Jimenez, is this: does that cool any notion of the Spurs trading Jakob?
No, not really, because at the end of the day, you need draft capital, and if the Spurs are going to continue doing a rebuild and may not want to pay Jakob what he's worth, because I'm looking at Jakob Poeltl's play right now, and every week that goes by, his value from a contract standpoint gets higher and higher. So at some point, the Spurs have to make that decision whether or not they're going to invest those dollars and pay him fair market value, or if they're actually going to just let him go and try to get a pick in return.
Right.
Zach Collins, I don't think anybody in the Spurs organization had anything invested in the future of Zach Collins, if you will. Okay. The guy's always hurt. It was one of those things where they signed him hoping that he'd be healthy, hoping that he could be that lottery talent that he was, because he was drafted in the lottery back in the day. But all the games that he misses, not just this year, but the year before and the year before that, basically missing, the majority of seasons. He is somebody who is injury plagued, and I don't want to call him damaged goods because we don't know what we have with him. But at the end of the day, a Charles Bassey comes in and does more than what we've seen out of Zach Collins, and he's only been with the team for like a week.
Yeah. You feel so bad for Collins. He just came back from taking a year away from the league because of a foot injury and an ankle injury, multiple surgeries when he was in Portland. Claws his way back, gets into G League, Austin Spurs, to get back in game shape and timing, all that stuff. So starting to come around with the Spurs, and then boom, gets hit with this leg injury. Again, the Spurs did not release how long he'll be out, but that leaves a void with the Spurs. Now, you mentioned another ripple effect is Charles Bassey. He's likely to probably stay with San Antonio until they figure out what's going to happen with Collins moving forward. But you're right. I don't think this team was heavily invested even financially, and I don't think he's a huge piece in this rebuild. Let's just say even if he was still healthy, I wouldn't be surprised if they're trying to flip him too. Saying, hey, look at Collins. He's good. Look at him. He's good to go. No injury so far. Any takers? So
you can't teach height, and he's 7 feet tall.
You can't teach height in that whatsoever. But I think it's all hands on deck again. Popovich talked about it pregame against Memphis, saying it's unfortunate, but they got to move on. So you just hope he comes back. But as far as Collins is concerned, let's just say he comes back. I think at this point of his career, you should just probably expect it to happen again. Let's say he comes back and he's going to say all the right things, Michael. When on that first media session, I'm fine, I'm doing good. Yeah, I'm fine. I just feel this is just going to happen again with this, whether he's in a Spurs uniform or a different NBA uniform moving forward.
There's something about foot injuries, man. They always reoccur. It's just the thing. And for it to happen so young in his life, I mean, it's funny. Feet and knees, they tend to, and hamstrings. Those are injuries that linger. And once you're healed, you're not exactly fully healed. You're better. You can work it out. You can run. But it's one of those things where you're just one step away from, having a 3 to 6 month injury. Now, he's not going to be gone for 3 to 6 months on this one. But it's just one of those things where you take a look at Zach Collins, and though he may be a talented guy, and like I said, you can't teach height, and he's 7 feet tall. At the end of the day, his career has shown that you cannot rely on him to be there day in and day out, because he's just a guy that tends to get injured.
Yeah. I know next week we're going to have Dr. Ryan McCorkle. He will be back on. I don't know when, everybody, but he will. That's definitely the top of his list. He's going to break down exactly what happened in Collins, what type of fracture, what caused that fracture, his prognosis, and much, much more. He's been texting me, Michael, since it happened. And we had just recorded an episode of Locked On Spurs with him. And then right when it was in the can, ready to go, set up for the next day, boom, the news came out. So we were kind of like, bad timing. But nevertheless, yeah, Zach Collins will be out indefinite period of time. I think the Spurs will be okay. Bassey, a very small sample size, but he's proven he has that hustle, that energy, defense, the size. He's pretty nimble for a big man, huh, Michael?
Oh, I love his motor, man. The guy has a motor. And out there, you can tell he is playing for a career.
Yeah.
He knows that this is an opportunity that he needs to take advantage of. And he's out there playing not only for the team this year, but he's also playing for his future livelihood. And you can tell out there, he leaves it all on the floor. He's somebody who is putting forth all his effort, and he's talented. I mean, he was banging bodies out there, wasn't afraid of Steven Adams, wasn't afraid of the situation or going up against Desmond Bain and John Morant and all those guys. He fit in very well. And think about it this way. If he's doing this well with the team right now, he's only been around for a week. I know the Spurs had him around earlier, but it's just one of those things. You take a look at that and think to yourself, okay, well, what if he's around these guys 2 months, 3 months, 4 months? Now what? And that's a very, very good thing to look forward to. But one last thing. There's some people, I'm included, who want the Spurs to have a good lottery pick, and that requires losses.
Right.
There's others who want this team to make strides when it comes to their growth and development as a player and as a team, especially when it comes to the young core. But this loss last night in overtime to Memphis was the best of both worlds. It really was.
Yeah.
Because for those who are looking for L's, they got that L.
Mm-hmm.
But for those who want the Spurs to be a team that's getting better and the core is getting experience and the core is showing that they can go toe-to-toe with an elite team or a very, very, very good squad, they got that. They can at least take that. And I'm not a big fan of moral victories, but this year we're going to have a lot of them. And this is one of the better moral victories you can have.
Yeah, and it's something you and I spoke about preseason, off-season, beginning of the regular season. We said, at least I know I said that. I think maybe you may have disagreed with me. I said this team is going to be scrappy. And I said, but eventually the talent will overtake them in clutch situations, close games, or just, a team that says, all right, time to flip the switch and put this young team away. We saw that in overtime. John Morant just, it was John Morant. Desmond Bain, again, being a pain for the Spurs, contributing. So, and you saw that. But hey, with every L is one step closer, perhaps, to that number one spot. And, of course, every L teaches these kids a lot of lessons. And I'm pretty sure they learned a lot of lessons last night in the loss to Memphis. We are done talking. We want to hear from you. What do you think about that loss versus Memphis? I know no such thing as moral victory, but are you feeling good about the trajectory of this young team's development? And what do you think about Zach Collins getting hurt once again? Michael, it's time for you to brag about your new show, Halftime with Mike Jimenez. What you got going on over there? What's going on at the Star? We need to know.
I don't know if it's new, but it's new and improved. But it's now called Halftime with Mike Jimenez from 12 to 2, Monday through Friday. San Antonio Sports Star 94.1 FM. We're also on AM 1250, but really you should be listening on the FM dial. But no, it's a fun show. I basically talk a lot of sports. I try to make a deep dive and on various topics. And this week I got blasted from people saying that I'm jumping the gun on so many different issues. But what's funny is that I believe that I spot the elephant in the room before everyone else does. And 2 or 3 weeks later, people start talking about what I was talking about 2 or 3 weeks before, simply because I saw what was going to happen, whether it be college football, whether it be the Cowboys, whether it be NFL or whatnot. I spot the elephant in the room before it actually happens, and it's been fun. We do a lot of pop culture references. We do movie reviews. We talk about streaming and things like that, but really it's a topical show, and I enjoy the fact that out of all the shows on San Antonio Sports Star, it's the one that has the most call-in. People call into the show to be a part of it, and they make some very good points, very good takes.
You're very competitive there, Jimenez. From the most call-ins to that one time you came on Locked On Spurs to talk about how you get the most post clicks among you guys out there. So Michael Jimenez is very competitive. More reason for you to follow him on Twitter at MikeESPNSA. Maybe get a little nice, healthy debate with him about a topic. Any topic. Trust me, Mike will dive in. And we thank you for making Locked On Spurs your first listen each and every day. Once again, urge you, check out Locked On Sports Today podcast. The biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, wherever you get podcasts. Locked On Spurs, same thing. Odyssey app, YouTube, Kens 5 Plus app. Go check out kens5.com/Spurs for all the latest in the silver and black, and much, much more. So for Michael Competitive Jimenez, I am Jeff Garcia. We're going to put a lock on this episode of Locked On Spurs.